Okay, welcome to your very first set of notes for American government. So you're probably thinking right now, why do I need to read about government? Why do I need to study government? And I just want to let you know that those are good questions. And there are reasons why we study government. And let me pose this question. Think about what your life would be if we didn't have government, because that really will help us to understand why it's so important to study. So if we think about that, it protects you, right, from terrorists. It provides you an education, paves the streets, punishes criminals, keeps you safe, protects your civil rights, helps the people who are poor, helps people who are older, and the list goes on and on and on. And again, this is why, some of the reasons why studying American government is just so important. All right, so let's start with what is government. Government is an institution through which a society governs a community or unit. So understand that a society is just a body of individuals living as members of a particular community. The government sets and administers public policy and exercises executive political power. Okay? So, essentially here, we will talk in more detail about what public policy is on a future slide. But executive political power is just the power to execute, enforce, and administer law. And this is typically going to be our executive branch of government. So our president, for example. This gives a government authority and control over the people. So essentially, government is among one of the oldest of all human inventions. We're not really sure exactly when government started, but it is clear that it first appeared when humans finally realized that in order to survive, we had to find a way to not only regulate individuals' behavior, but also the behavior of their neighbors. Okay, so again, what is public policy? So now we're going to dive into this concept. This essentially is what the government decides to do, ranging from taxation, defense, education, healthcare, and transportation. This also could involve civil rights, crime, the environment, working conditions. The list is nearly endless. Government must have the power to make and carry out those public policies. Understand that in this case, power is just the ability to command or prevent action, the ability to achieve a desired end. And they must have that power in order to carry out those public policies to ensure a better life for all. All right, parts of government. So this is just going to be an overview. In later units within our course, we will be diving into each branch specifically. So the legislative branch, executive, and judicial branches we will be covering in depth. So again, this is just an overview for you. But the legislative branch, they essentially have the power to make laws and frame that public policy. The executive power, they have the power to execute, enforce, and administer law, as we talked about on a previous slide. The judicial power, they have the power to interpret laws, determine their meaning, and to settle disputes outlined in our Constitution. Also understand that the ultimate responsibility for the exercise of these powers can be held by a single person, like a dictator, or a small group of people. And in that case, those who rule are not really listening to the people. They're making choices on their own, and they're not responsible for the will of the people. Where with a democracy, the responsibility for the exercise of these powers rests with the majority of the people. And also in a democracy, supreme authority rests typically in a constitution, or at least that's how it is here in the United States. And a constitution is just a body of fundamental laws setting out principles, structures, and processes of a government. Okay, so what is a state? So you might be thinking of a state as such as Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and these are states. But in this sense, I'm actually referring to a country. So this is a body of people living in a defined territory, organized politically, and with the power to enforce law without the consent of any higher authority. Okay, so in order to be considered a state in this sense, it must have all four parts: population, territory, sovereignty, and government. And we're going to talk about each one of these in detail. Take note that the term state is actually a legal entity. The term nation is actually an ethnic term referring to races or other large groups of people. And the term country is a geographical term referring to a particular place, region, or area of land. So in this case, country, or our country, the United States, is actually considered a state because it has all four of these parts: population, territory, sovereignty, and government. There are more than 190 states in the world today. They vary greatly in size, military power, natural resources, and economic importance. Okay, so again, state versus state. So on the left hand here, state equals a subunit of a country. So a state can be Michigan, Ohio, New York. The other type of state can also be known as a country. So United States, Canada, but again, must have all four of those parts: population, territory, sovereignty, which is just the ultimate authority to make your own rules, and then a government. Now, you'll notice that according to this definition of a state, Ohio, Michigan, New York would not meet the requirements. Yes, they have a population. Yes, they have a territory, and they even have a government as well. But they do not have the power to make their own rules to some degree. So, yes, they can make some of their own rules, but in some cases they have to listen to the government of the United States and also the Constitution, which is the law of the land. Okay, so parts of a state. Population. Smallest state has 27,000 people. The largest state has 1.8 billion people, which is 1/5 of the world population. Any guesses on the largest state? So if you guessed China, you would be correct. Does anyone does everyone have to be the same inside a population? What do you think? So, no. I mean, here in the United States, I think the majority of people are proud to be American. That's something that we have in common, is that we are American. But that doesn't mean that we're all the same, or that we even should be. And I think here in America, we pride ourselves on our freedom to make choices when it comes to the languages we speak, the religions that we practice. And so that originality, I think, is something that we embrace or should embrace. We can't all share the same language, the ethnic backgrounds, same customs, languages. It's just, we're going to be different, and that's okay. Okay, parts of a state. Territory. Our smallest state has 24 square miles. Our largest state has 6.6 million square miles. Any guesses? So if you said Russia, you would have been correct. This is actually the largest state in square miles. State must have boundaries as well. Any guesses on how big the United States is? So our total area is 3,787,425 square miles. Okay, parts of a state. Every state is sovereign. And again, by meaning of state here, we're talking about a country. It has supreme and absolute power within its own territory and can decide its own foreign and domestic policies. Are the states within the United States technically sovereign? So the answer to this question would be technically no. The states of the United States are not sovereign because they are subordinate. They are subordinate to the Constitution of the United States. They cannot make their own decisions in some cases with some things. Also understand that with the United States, it is considered a sovereign state because they can determine their own form of government, shape their own economic system, and shape their own foreign policies. And that's what makes them sovereign, which is one of the main categories that you have to have in order to be considered a state in the or in this sense. Okay, parts of a state government. Each state is politically organized, meaning every state has a government. Government is necessary to avoid what Thomas Hobbes called the war of every man against every man. So basically, Thomas Hobbes believed that if we did not have a government, then men would constantly be at war with one another. They would not get along, and little would be accomplished. So is Ohio a state? Let's look at the 4 qualifications, which we've kind of done this already, but just as review. Population, yes. Territory, yes. Government, yes. Sovereign, no. Ohio can make its own rules about some things, but still has to listen to the national government and the Constitution. So then again, what is a country technically? It's just a geographic term, and it refers to the specific region or area. And again, the United States is not necessarily a country, or it is in the geographical sense, but in the international sense, it's actually considered a state.